Imagine stepping back in time to the late 1500s. A group of English settlers braved the treacherous Atlantic to build a new life in America, establishing the Roanoke colony. But when a supply ship returns 3 years later, the settlement is eerily silent. Every single man, woman, and child has vanished without a trace. Imagine this. It's the late 1500s, and England is desperate to plant its flag in the New World. The goal, a permanent colony in North America for trade, military power, and after a few failed attempts, a new group of 115 men, women, and children set sail in 1587, led by an artist and navigator named John White. Their destination is Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. This journey would become one of the most famous and baffling mysteries in American history. When they arrived, the first thing they found was an unsettling omen, a small fort, left behind by a previous group of 15 English soldiers just a year earlier, was dismantled. The soldiers were gone. No graves, no remains, no explanation. Undeterred, the new colonists had no choice but to start over. They rebuilt the settlement. Among them was Governor White's own daughter, Eleanor Dare, who soon gave birth to a baby girl named Virginia Dare, very first English child born in the Americas. This was meant to be a hopeful new beginning, but the challenges started almost immediately. Relations with the local Native American tribes were a tangled mess. Some, like the CROATOAN people, were friendly, but others, like the CROATOAN, were hostile after violent encounters with earlier English expeditions. Mistrust was high, food was scarce, and the region was a powder keg of old conflicts. As supplies dwindled and a harsh winter loomed, the colonists grew desperate. They pleaded with Governor White to sail back to England for help. He was reluctant to leave his daughter, his son-in-law, and his brand-new granddaughter, but the survival of the entire colony was at stake. He finally agreed, promising to return in just a few months with supplies and more people. He left in late 1587, never imagining it would be the last time he would see any of them. Just as White arrived back in England, history threw him a curve. War broke out with Spain. This was the famous conflict that led to the Spanish Armada in 1588. Queen Elizabeth, I ordered every available ship to stay and defend the English coast. A quick trip back to America was now impossible. For 3 long years, John White tried everything. He begged for a ship. He negotiated with merchants. He even tried to fund his own small vessels, but every attempt failed. Ships were seized for the war effort, or they were attacked by pirates and forced to turn back. What should have been a 3-month round trip stretched into an agonizing 3-year delay. Finally, in August of 1590, John White made it back to Roanoke, but as his ship approached the shore, a dreadful silence hung in the air. The settlement was gone. Every single house and structure had been carefully dismantled and taken away. The heavy cannons and tools were gone too, but there were no signs of a battle. No burned buildings, no scattered belongings, and most eerily, no body. It was as if the colonists had packed up and moved out deliberately. Then he saw it. Carved into a wooden post were the letters CROA. On another tree nearby, he found the first 3 letters, CRO. Before White had left, he had given the colonists a specific instruction. If they had to move, they should carve the name of their new location, and if they were in danger, they were to carve a Maltese cross above the name. There was no cross. This wasn't a distress signal. It was a message. White was convinced they had gone to CROATOAN Island, modern-day Hatteras Island, which was the home of the friendly Croatan tribe. He desperately wanted to sail there to find his family. But just as they prepared to leave, a massive storm, a hurricane, battered his ships. The anchors were lost, the cables snapped, and the crew was terrified the ship would sink. The captain refused to risk it. With a heavy heart, and with no other choice, John White was forced to sail back to England. He never found his daughter, his granddaughter, or any of the 115 colonists. He died never knowing what happened to them. So, what happened to the Lost Colony? For years, the English crown planned to send search parties, but the ongoing war with Spain and other political issues meant the missions were always postponed. By the time anyone made a serious effort to look, the trail was cold. The only clues came from Native American oral histories. Some said the English had gone to live with the Croatan people. Others reported they had moved farther inland. A few stories even mentioned conflicts where white-skinned people were involved. But no definitive evidence was ever found. Over the centuries, historians and archaeologists have pieced together several evidence-based theories. The most widely accepted theory is assimilation. The colonists simply moved to CROATOAN Island and joined the Croatan tribe. The evidence for this is strong. the carved word itself, the friendly relationship the colonists had with the Croatan chieftain, and later accounts from explorers who reported seeing native people with European features and gray eyes. Archaeologists have even found English artifacts from that era on Hatteras Island. Another strong theory is that they moved inland. In 2012, researchers using special imaging techniques looked at an old map drawn by John White himself. They found a patch covering a certain area, and underneath it, a symbol marking a potential fort deep inland. Excavations of that location, near the Roanoke tribe's territory, have turned up English pottery and metalworking tools from the 1500s. This suggests that at least some of the colonists may have headed inland, perhaps splitting from the main group. A major contributing factor was almost certainly the environment. Tree studies have shown that the Roanoke region suffered the worst drought in 800 years, right when the colonists were there, from 1587 to 1589. This would have destroyed their crops, led to starvation, and possibly forced them to break up into smaller groups to find food and water. This also helps explain why they might have sought help from native tribes who knew how to survive in those conditions. So, where are the boat? That's one of the most haunting questions. The most likely answer is that there was no single disaster. If the colonists integrated into native communities, they would have been buried according to tribal customs over many years. Their remains scattered and lost to time. The coastal environment is also harsh. Erosion and shifting sands could have easily buried or washed away any settlements or gravesites. In recent years, archaeology has given us the most exciting clues. On Hatteras Island, the old CROATOAN, researchers have found parts of an English sword, slate writing tablets, and other personal items dating directly to the colony. And at that inland site from the map, they found more artifacts, suggesting a small group of English settlers lived there. This points to the very real possibility that the colony didn't just disappear, it fractured. Some went south to CROATOAN, others went west, inland. They split up to survive. So, what really happened? Based on all the factual evidence, the most logical conclusion is that the colonists left Roanoke voluntarily because of the drought and lack of supplies. They split into at least two groups. One went to live with their allies on CROATOAN Island, and another moved inland. Over time, they assimilated, married into the tribes, and their English identities slowly faded into the rich cultural tapestry of Native American life. The Lost Colony wasn't lost in a single, dramatic event. They simply faded into the fabric of the New World. After more than 400 years, the Lost Colony of Roanoke remains one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. But it's not a ghost story. It's a real story of survival, adaptation, and disappearance. The truth is likely not one of dramatic violence, but a quieter, more complex story of a community that broke apart, scattered, and ultimately vanished from the pages of history, but not from our collective memory. Thanks for watching. If you're fascinated by history's unsolved mysteries, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the past. See you next time.